moment, and the design industry is by nature one of the most progressive field to work in. So the best designers thinking outside the box and constantly seek to innovate themselves, and learning new skills is all part of this. This is why I think the ability to keep learning is the key. There are a lot of different programming languages available for designers to use, and each language has its own strength that make it appropriate for the particular type of process that we're working on. So designers will benefit greatly from acquiring foundational knowledge of HTML and CSS, and would perhaps be surprised on how easy can be to learn the basics, because HTML and CSS don't involve any programming logic. So learning how to code the front end user interface and previewing it give us as a designer the opportunity to preview our layouts on different devices.
So basically here you can you create your design, but then you also give it life by adding, for example, JS, JavaScript behaviors. And so what we usually do is we create a design, then we build the HTML template to pour in the content, whatever items we need inside. Then you use the CSS to design the layouts and the looks and also animations any way you want. And in the end, you add the JS to actually make everything react to the user and for him to be able to engage. You can see it the easiest example for this is, for example, responsivity. Usually, things when you design them as a static or not interactive design, basically it stays the same. So if the screen changes, it squishes, and stretches. And here you can see, for example, 3 types of devices in 2 different orientations. And for each, like, it's the same content, but it has different spacing, different sizes, different layouts, and everything knows how to react responsively with just one design in HTML and CSS. The file in the end knows how to react to the screen size, and it knows which size to react to. For example, you can see here a design that was actually made for portrait, but what happens if the user changes the orientation to landscape? So in this case, it just stretches because no one thought on how it will be responsive. But in a lot of times, developers actually do think about responsive design. Responsive design is not something new, but they also think as developers, which is usually like how to optimize it, how to easily add it to get to the quickest solution, and they don't usually or necessarily actually redesign for the new orientation. Okay, they might have added, in this case, just extra white lines, so the portrait would be in the middle of the landscape, and on the sides of the landscape you would just have really big white areas, and we want to use the whole screen for the ad, so that would be just a waste. On the other hand, a designer could easily just remake the animation in a landscape level, or maybe flip it to the side and leave the text as it is. There are many different ways to solve this, but we just want to show one example here.
Of course.
Cool.
So I think that one of the most exciting point in learning how to code is bringing your creation to life in a new medium that is accessible by millions instantly. So to be able to come up with an idea, to design it, to build it, and eventually go live, I think this is the reason to learn, because it gives us the opportunity to create interactive experiences and generate visual that respond to user inputs by combining code and design aesthetic at the same time. This is an interactive end card. This is a product that we consider an A to Z product that one of our designer did, and you can see clearly the workflow starting from the sketch. The sketch has been designed, and last step has been coded magistrally and give us the sense of all the micro interaction. And I think this is a really nice wrap of this concept, because you can see yourself how many things you can unlock while you're coding. Okay, if you even thought before about how to close the box of the pizza, well, this has been done in code.
So that's a great example here that you can see, like the regular part where usually designers sketch and then they make the design, but the missing part where it comes to life is something that is super important and makes everything just be much more interesting and engaging.
As a designer, you naturally approach your work from a design perspective. But what happens if you could see from a different vantage point, let's say through the lens of the developers? Of course, learning front-end skills will broaden your horizon far beyond design, and you'll discover fresh approaches to old problems and develop new ways of thinking and learn to consider your design more objectively. Ultimately, we want our design to be realized and not to stay on a concept and aesthetical level. Without, though, knowing the boundaries of what can be done and what cannot be done, you're likely to be in frustration on the execution phase. So the ability to code will affect the ability to influence your design decision, because it helps you rationalize your design decision. Understanding the code structure, though, will provide a deeper understanding of the front-end development process, and in turn will cause the designers will think much more about their design and how to make them more efficient for that particular process. Designing with an understanding of the tools that the developers are working with will definitely give you more credential even when you pitch your design. Even with those designers that say that they don't know how to code, they work long enough with developers to understand the logic. Sure, they have never written code before, but those experiences help. So code is really meant to help you paint a better picture of your idea and speed up the design process.
So I can't stress it enough. Like, even if you really don't know how to code per se, but you can read it, you can understand what you're seeing. There's a lot of variables that you can touch and actually make sure that your design is exactly how you envisioned it. There's a lot of many things that you can actually do with HTML, CSS, and JS, for example, which is the technology we mainly use for interactive end cards. For example, here we took a screenshot from the store, a static screenshot, right? And it has many weapons and weapon parts in it. And we thought what we could do with it. And in the start, it was we thought maybe we should make a shooter, or maybe we should ask the user what weapon he would choose. But then we actually had another idea, because we can we can break apart the elements in the screen and use each and any of them to get a different reaction and engagement out of it. So what we decided to do is actually build your own weapon. This thing doesn't even exist in the in the game originally, but it's very engaging and very nice, very interesting for the user. And what we did is basically take a static image, break it apart, redesign the layouts and the images, the background and everything. And then we assembled it inside the CSS. So the animation you see in the end, where the rifle is being rotated and scaled, it's in CSS. So it's very light in terms of weight. The animation is very smooth. You don't need to even do PNG sequences, videos, GIFs, whatever. And the parts here are actually, you have more parts than you can use. And we gave each part like the actual slot it can go to. And some of the parts don't even fit the rifle. So if you click them, you can see they shake as it's wrong. And once you have all the parts, the bar fills and the rifle grows. Now, this was achievable using the CSS and JS. It's not very hard to do it. All you need to do is actually say that, tell it that once a certain part is clicked into a certain area, it just changes the image to the next one. And once it has all the necessary images, or they've been exhausted, the end animation where the rifle rotates will happen. Basically, what it does is the JS is telling the CSS when to happen. That's it. Now, sometimes there's harder parts in code, but a lot of times it's just a matter of understanding what you see and just copying it to where you need, which brings me to the next slide, where it's actually easier than it looks, okay? So in this case, it's basically just two layers, right? I have the top layer with the unsanded wood, and then the bottom layer with the sanded wood. But when you try to look at the code of the scratch mechanic here, which is like uncovering the mask, it's actually a lot of lines of code in JavaScript. Some of them, like I totally understood, which showing where the finger is to track your motion, to track the mask. Some I less understood, but it was mainly like the deeper parts of the codes that I don't really need to play with. It's not variables, but the important parts are the variables. So I can control the size, so I can control what is moving with my finger. So in this case, you can see that the sand machine is actually moving with my finger. Now, it's a very scary code, but actually, if you use CodePen or any other, it's just a matter of copy pasting it into place. You don't really need to understand, like to know how to code. You just need to understand it. You copy, paste, and that's it. Now, in this case, since we have a lot of different behaviors and user experiences between ads, we usually make templates. And in these templates, we actually save the parts of code, and we shape the template layout to the design that we want to achieve, which brings me to the next slide. Here, for example, we have a simple slide, a simple end card with 3 options. Each option, once I click on it, will display another image under it. The top image might disappear or not, depending on the variable I set, which is just true, false. And then I can just move it and add more, distract maybe less, and get different results. So for example, here you can see that with this one template, at the top left, we made a traditional chest interactive end card where the user can choose one of 3 different colored chests. Once he clicks, he will see like an open chest with gems inside. On the other hand, we just on the right of it, we made another one where we added a character. So we moved all the 3 options a bit to the side. We made different height for it, so we could place it exactly where we want. And again, once you click on it, the image will change to whatever the user experience is there, which I think it's like an attack animation. But in this case, we could enlarge the layout and add an extra character by just setting the size of the box from 100% to 75%, and moving it to the right and adding the character on the left in the remaining 25%. In the middle left, you can see another option where the kitchen is like destroyed. Some parts are on fire. The fridge is broken. The windows are broken. And once you click on it, it removes the broken image. It replaces it with the fixed image. And basically, it looks like you're fixing the kitchen. So it's just replacing. Again, it's the same kind of mechanic, a little bit different layout, but it feels like a playable in this case. And on the center right, we even went further, and instead of changing the image at the same place where the item was, we actually changed it on the side. So we divided the screen into 2 sides. In one side, you have like 2 options, the square or the other one. And once you click on it, there's a play animation on the right side, and it shows the result. Both options are playable. It all depends on the user decision. And I can't stress enough how much the user's decision impacts his satisfaction from the ad. If he thinks or sees that his decision actually made a difference, it's a totally different story from just clicking and continuing with whatever that was if he wouldn't even clicked. At the bottom left, you can see an option where we ask the user to choose which combo he wants to perform, basically. Again, once he will click, there will be an animation on the whole screen. And on the bottom right, and in this case, we even actually removed an option. So we only have 2. And in the bottom right, you can see it's kind of a mess visually. It's a game of hidden objects. So you have a lot of chaos in the image. But this is kind of the idea of this game. And you need to find certain you need to find 3 dogs in that image. And all of this different variation and experiences are actually all from the same template, same mechanic, same JS code. And the only difference is the CSS, the way we designed the layouts with the CSS. Now, CSS isn't actually code. JavaScript is. It has logic in it. CSS doesn't have logic. It's just tags with variables, so you can easily like change the sizes, the positioning, rotation, and so on. But it's all like design stuff. It doesn't have any logic. You don't really need to code a lot with CSS. It's just a matter of a little bit of experience with it, and after 1-2 sessions, you're good to go.
I think this is a classical example of how important it is to knowing the rules before you breaking them. And as Emmanuel mentioned, of course, all the layout that you see on the right start from just one template. This is the one on the left. So understanding how code works open up new ways of thinking about and designing for the digital environment. It presents fresh opportunities, as we said before, to designing amazing digital visual experiences, because allow us to build interactive products that engage with end users. It's our responsibility in Playworks to hand over creatives that will drive competitive performance. And this is possible only with a solid understanding of the technology we are designing for. Our designs are executable. It's just about finding the right compromise between the scope and what's best for the users. So having a solid understanding of CSS and animations will help this process along and will reduce the frictions that we have with developers. So exploring and garnering an understanding of how user interface designs are delivered using various digital technologies can take designers to the next level and boost their ability to deliver great designs.
Cool. So, of course, I totally agree with this. At the start, when we just like I didn't know HTML and CSS at the start, right? I basically started with a simple template, and with time, I kept pushing my boundaries and changing things, making it bigger, moving them around, and when I got to a really sophisticated mechanic that I couldn't solve myself, I either copied it from CodePen or asked a developer to help. But when I did, like, I gave him the exact schematic or document that he needed to make exactly what I needed, so it would still be flexible enough, and I could actually continue from that point and evolve the new template into more things. And I would like to show a few more examples of those cases. So in this, we basically combined code with design. So at the start, we had the HTML and CSS animation that you see on the left. It was a very basic template where you just tap on the screen, and as long as you keep on pressing, the video that the video would play, and then you would see like ice cream pouring out of the top, and you would fill the ice cream cone. Now, while this was really like a satisfying animation, it didn't perform very well because of the user experience. Like I said before, the user doesn't really have a choice here. He just pressed, and if he didn't press, it didn't continue. It looks good. It's not that interesting. And then, while HTML and CSS made it look very nice and the animations were very smooth, it lacked the interesting user experience and engagement that we needed. So we added JS logic. So you can see it on the right. We added, instead of the fingerprint, we added 3 different buttons, and each button actually works on its own. And we also added a goal. And if you press the wrong button, for example, starting from the pink color, there's no pink in the goal, you would still actually pour the ice cream into the cone, and in the end you would fail. It would move you to an ending screen with a fail. And if you did the actual half part brown, half part white, it would give you the end animation and correct screen. Now, this was it wasn't an easy JS logic, but it wasn't very hard. Again, it doesn't mean that you need to code this, but as long as you understand the logic behind it, you could tell a developer exactly what you need, what you want, how you want it to behave, and he can do it for you. Or if you have just enough understanding, you can even do it yourself. So in this case, the combination of a little bit of code actually enhanced the ad by a lot, and it overperformed. It was a really good creative, and it ran over I think over tens of millions of times. So from one top animation, we actually went to an actual playable logic. Cool. In the next one, we added multiple phases. So again, it's a little bit similar to the template we saw before, where you had 3 options, but in this case, we prolonged it. Okay, we actually have 3 different choices to make. And what we actually needed to do here is in CSS, you can tell an item to either show or not show, and also like add animation for it. But if you have more than one option, you basically need to start from not showing anything. And once you click on one option, you need to show the animation for it and make it appear. So we unhide an element, and then we move it next. Now, when it's changing to the next item, the first item isn't disappearing because we didn't tell it to disappear. And this way, we could actually make a few different levels. As you can see in the demo here, at the start, we can change the outfit. Then we're changing the hairstyle, but the outfit stays. And then in the end, we also added a CSS animation where the background changes, the character is actually scaled down, moved to the side, another character is coming from the side, and it's all done with CSS keyframes. Keyframes in CSS work exactly the same way they do in After Effects. You just give, you tell it in one place where to be, and then in the other. But the only difference is that you need to write it instead of like just position it in the artboard like you have in After Effects. So in this case, again, the user actually felt he mattered. He has a ton of choices to make. If he sees this ad more than one time, he can replay with a different outcome. So again, this worked very, very well. And it was basically done with just grouping elements and telling the JS that once one element was selected in a group, move to the next group. And that's it. Cool. So that's just a few of our end cards that we made. As you can see, we have a lot of different types of animations and behaviors. Some were made for a more simple simple engagement where it just plays on your curiosity and makes you want to engage with it. Some actually have some sort of progress where you need to build something, you need to find something, you need to choose a mission or build a whole town and get enough money to continue to the next stage. A lot of times we're trying to get a totally different experience from the same template or behavior that we have, and to just like basically get a totally different type of engagement from the user. Jaco, do you want to elaborate here?
Yes, of course. Like each of our solution, this is also why we're A/B testing a lot in order to create more user engagement. So the first solution could be totally different from a second one in order, starting from the layout and finishing to the engagement rate of the creative. I want to wrap it up this presentation with something that I think it's really valuable at the moment in the market. I think in every design job opportunity, knowing how to code, okay, can make a big difference in the screening processes as well as the day-to-day work. So employers are looking for individuals with the skills that they need to be productive in an increasingly digital workplace. And that's why the coding skill had been included as an indispensable skill for user interface and user experience designers. So knowing the basic of web development and code make you more marketable and adaptable. It helps you, of course, better communicate with developers in their real work. And last but absolutely not least, it's a big helper to you for each of your design. If a designer knows the basic of HTML and CSS and JavaScript, they already be miles ahead of the competition. You will be 100% a unique asset for any company and any product team. So the designers who can code, they may also have a more secure footing in the job market. Multi-skilled designers are considered agile team players. This is exactly the kind of versatility that employers are looking for. So the more skill you bring on the table, the higher is the chance to get hired. And to wrap it up, should designers learn to code? Maybe yes, maybe not, but designers who code or at least demonstrate a deep knowledge of the technologies will become a great asset for any multidisciplinary team, and it will pay off in the long run. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
And
any questions?
We're open to questions if you have it.
We'd be happy to answer. Cool. So we have a question. What advice do you have for people wanting to start out with learning to code? What course programming programs, videos do you recommend watching? So I think there's a lot of tutorials on YouTube. Also, CodePen is very good. The basics of HTML and CSS, I would start with the basic of HTML, and then from that it's like after 1-2 sessions you already know it, and then from that you would move to CSS. And from CSS is a little bit, it's not complex, but it has more content to it. So it involves a few more sessions usually. But again, after just a few sessions, you pretty much know everything, and then it's up to like experience and just trying things out. And after these two, I would start to also try basic JavaScript. I wouldn't like if you would want to continue to advance JavaScript afterwards. Be my guest. It's fun, but it's getting a little bit harder at that point. But basic JavaScript is also very easy to learn, and there's a lot of tutorials and courses online that you can start. I just have to say that I learned like on the way. Usually I wanted to do something, I searched Google for it, and then found the solution. I didn't actually start from a specific course, but I did have the first basic template and great teachers and at work. Achwa. Yeah. We have another question. Yeah. So Alex is also adding that any course with HTML and CSS can help, and then you can study the basics of programming. Does knowing HTML and CSS translate into VR or AR? That's actually an interesting question. I think AR and VR are actually part of code. HTML and CSS is more the content and layout. So it would help you like maybe place certain elements on the screen, but AR and VR, you actually need to have the code for it, and it's a little bit more complex. You could probably check online if there's some sort of a template for it already. But we in the ad business actually can't really use it right now because you need permissions from the devices, and that's like a big privacy issue. So right now we're not doing it. But like it's a part of codes and not part of HTML or CSS. To ensure digital accessibility, etc., like WCAG, etc., what coding resources should we look at? To be honest, I'm not really sure. I think there's like a few different possibilities in most cases. It's always worth just asking in a forum of that like specific specific type of resource, and like checking the pros and cons of everything. Like usually there is pros who know how to, who tell you like don't use this, it's a lot easier in that way, or there are major bugs in this case, or it doesn't work on certain devices. So I would usually just research a few and check from that. Are interactive end cards killing the playables? No, but it depends on the title. So a lot of times interactive end cards are actually working better than a playable, And a lot of times playable are working better than interactive end cards. It depends um, on the apps the ad is moving on, is showing on, and it also depends on the title itself. Sometimes showing a video and interactive end card afterwards is a lot better, and sometimes not. The thing is that interactive end cards are actually a very short user experience. So the user is watching a video for 15 to 30 seconds. He sees what like what the game is about usually, and then he can he has a 2 to 6 second interaction with the interactive end card. In this case, it doesn't always portray the game. It might be like just a few options. It might not even show actual gameplay. Like a lot of advertisements in the TV, billboards, or whatever, they're not always showing the actual. For example, you can have a couch that talks. Okay, couch doesn't talk, but it can in the commercial it can speak to the couch next, so next to it. So a lot of times we can portray a different experience for the user just to make him engage, while playable is usually actually a piece of the gameplay. So if the gameplay is like a lot of fun, usually it will win over the interactive end card, while sometimes interactive end cards are winning over playables because they show um, more options or a higher level than you would usually have when just trying to understand how the game mechanic works. So that's on that. I know a fair amount of Python from Nuke scripting. I have found much use for it in my design work. Are there any uses you have for Python? Actually, Python is I, I saw that people are starting to implement it more and more in creative ads. We didn't try it yet, but I'm actually kind of excited to try it. I think it's flexible enough, and there's a lot of different options. For sure, if we would have a Python developer or a designer that knows Python, it would totally be an option for that. I'm planning to switch my career from marketeer to UX designer. How learning now learning Figma. Familiar with WordPress, please advise when I should take care of coding skills while learning UX from scratch. So sometimes you have these tools that actually really help you jump over the coding skills. They do it basically for you. We're also developing something similar to ease like the development time for our designers, for more complex user interactions, where we don't want just 1, 2, 3 interactions, but we also want to add some logic and longer experiences. And sometimes you have the tools to really help you jump over this gap, and it does it for you. But still, learning and knowing your possibilities and what works on different devices, for example, and knowing like having the knowledge on how to do things can always help with this thing. To the place where you want to learn UX is where you basically you can do it at any point. I would start with thinking like, if I would be a user and I saw this ad what would make me click on it, what would make me engage with it, what would they think about it. If you just make a static banner, it may attract your attention. Like there's a lot of different strategies and theories about attention, but once you have something that is it has animation, it's moving on your screen, and also has feedback, and the user engages with it and gets different results, this is really where you shine. So if your ads don't give you that feeling, it's time to think about user experience. What else?
Use it combination with other prototype tools.
Yeah, so I'll read it as well. Do you guys prototype with only code, or do you use it? Do you use it in combination with other prototyping tools? So yes and no. We have a few in-house tools that we built for easy prototyping. Sometimes it stays like we use it even not to prototype, but to actually get a final result, like with the interactive videos. But everyone has their own like way of creating things. For example, for me, when I have something that is very complicated and I want to show exactly how I want it to work, and I'm not the person who would do it in the end, or it's too complicated for me, then I would usually just make a demo in After Effects of a video demo, and then I would show it to the developer or the designer that will design this card or playable. But if we would have like there's nothing wrong with using other options, of course. As mentioned before, there are actually many players in these like type of field. You have Figma, and you have InVision for like websites, and I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm like forgetting right now, but the internet is filled with them, and it's just a matter of what is comfortable for you to prototype with. Cool. Do you have anything else? Any more questions? What development path would you recommend to a novice UX designer who only entered? How you develop yourself to be better than yesterday? So first of all, we always learn. There's always things to learn and see. The evolution is a natural part of everything, I think, if it's life or creative. And like you need to keep pushing yourself to learn new stuff. Don't stay in the same place. For example, it's just very easy to show it with the templates we used. We always push ourselves to get a different result, different layout, different experience, even if we're using the same template. What I would recommend for UX, this is a little bit hard. Like I was always interested by user experience, right? Like you call the elevator in your building. There are many different ways the elevator works, and usually most of them don't work well. And I get pissed about it. Like there are 6 elevators. Why 6 different people need to go into one elevator at the same time? Why don't they all come? And we can see that they're not in use. So I just noticed this thing. I think how the logic of it would work. It's not necessarily design in this case, right? It's logic, but it's UX design. It's user experience. And then there's like good design where you look at something and you think, wow, that was really great. I would love to have this experience again. And it could happen in anything, right? Like the example on the top of my mind is when you're scrolling in the iPhone and then you reach the end of the page and you have like a stretch mark. It just feels so much nicer than getting stuck all of a sudden and not moving. So if you notice these things, UX is just a natural part, and like you will start accumulating this stuff. And if not, just look at stuff and try to understand the UX behind it. UX is everywhere. And of course, there's always like courses and like degrees on design and user experience and whatnot. So that's my tip about it. Maybe Jaco, if you want to add something about it, I think it's more.
No, I think it's
way.
important to allow ourselves, once we start, to make mistakes. Always trying from something small, understanding the logic, and then move to something even more challenging. Each time, more challenging, more challenging, more challenging. Do mistakes, because it's important for you to master this skill. If you're not allowing yourself, or you're not being generous enough to do a lot of mistakes, you won't progress.
Definitely. I learned a lot from mistakes. Cool. We have another question. From After Effects, we can render JSON. Can we use JSON in prototyping? So that's actually a good question. We tried a few different tools with it. I'm sure it is possible to prototype from JSON. Specifically, we don't. I think like we do export specific parts to JSON, like animations, for example. But like the behavior and specifics usually we found it problematic to implement it exactly as intended with After Effects. But again, it depends on the environment and tools you're using. So I know it is possible, but it's just that we're not using it. And that's all questions. So again, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. That's it from me.
Thank you very much to everyone who came to listen to us today. We will gladly share our slide presentation later on the web, so you can go over if you need it. And please feel free to contact us if you have any other questions, or to share even your point of view on the topic. Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.
Cool. Bye, guys.